Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. Our guest today is Rabbi Daniel Lapin, known to many as America's Rabbi. He's a noted rabbinic scholar, best-selling author, and a TV host. Hello, Rabbi. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, thank you.
Our Parsha is an eventful Parsha. It's called Korach. In this Parsha, Korach and few of his peers, more than 200, challenge Moses' leadership. The earth opens up and swallows the mutineers. A subsequent plague is stopped by Aaron's offering of ketoret. Aaron's staff blossoms and brings forth almonds to prove that his designation as high priest is ordained by God. The first pasuk of our parsha says, ויקח קורח בן יצהר בן קהת בן לוי ודתן ואבירם בני אליאב ואון בן פלט בני ראובן. Korach, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kehat, the son of Levi, took himself to one side along with Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the sons of Peleth, descendants of Reuben. So the first pasuk does not prepare us for the drama that is about to unfold, but let's begin in the middle of this drama. There are people coming in, challenging Moshe. How does Moshe react to such challenge?
At first, those of us accustomed to Jewish synagogue life are no doubt shocked beyond belief to hear that there are Jews challenging leadership. I mean, how can this possibly be?
Right. This never happens in the life of a rabbi.
So this is obviously artificial and fictional because this never really happens. But
right.
Taking it at face value for the moment, it's clear, of course, that this is a fixed feature of leadership. My goodness, during World War II, while Winston Churchill was busy saving the nation and building an alliance with the United States that would ultimately bring the new world to the rescue of the old, at the same time, he had to fend off political challenges to his leadership. So it's obviously a very real thing. And we see this many times during the desert. During those 40 years, this isn't the only time, but there is something different about this one. And I'm pleased that you focused in on that beginning section, because in almost every revolt, in almost every challenge to Moses' leadership, Moses deals with it in exactly the way that a chief executive of a company has to deal with a rebellion. For that matter, by the way, every parent. What parent hasn't had a 5-year-old little girl stamp her foot and said, "No, I won't"? That's called a mutiny against leadership, obviously. And parents deal with this just as Moses does every time, which is, you calmly resolve it, you try and diffuse the situation, but at the same time, you establish and you make quite clear that as long as you're in charge, then it has to be your way. That's what Moses does every time. But in this case, in Pasuk Dalet, in verse 4, there's this weird thing that he is evidently agonized and tormented by this thing, and he flings himself down on the ground in utter despair, right? And then only after he's sort of pulled himself together does he then address them in the 5th verse, verse 5, Pasuk Hey. And this fascinates me so much. And each year, like many people, I try and find something new and exciting about the Sedra. And this year I was just very intrigued by what was so bothersome about this revolt. There've been many of them.
Maybe he thought they had a point.
And indeed, I think you're saying something very valid, because we find a bunch of Psalms, a number of chapters in Psalms, I think from chapter 42 onwards, 5 or 6 or 7 Psalms start off Mizmor Livnei Korach. And so we see that Korach's sons are not sort of embarrassed by their heritage. It's not as if they're run out of town or anything.
Right.
And in the first book of Divrei Hayamim, in chapter 6, we actually find listed the descendants of Korach all the way to Shmuel. So you must be right. I agree with you. It is impossible that this guy is all 100% evil and terrible, because you don't have a descendant, Shmuel Hanavi, Samuel the prophet, if that's the case. So obviously there's something real going on here. But at the same time, fascinatingly, there is a pasuk in Tehillim, which sort of really identifies something that's going on here, and that is in Tehillim Kuf Tedvav, I think. In Kuf Tedvav, we've got this weird thing where David HaMelech is actually focusing in on this very topic we're discussing, and he goes off and he says, Vayakanu leMoshe b'machane la'aron kadosh adoshem. They beamed zealous jealousy at Moses and at Aaron, his chosen one. When they use the word kinah, it's kind of interesting, because the structure of the Torah, as everybody knows, is very specific, and words, unlike in English, which is a language rich in vocabulary but lacking precision. There are many, many synonyms with no specific rules about their usage. But in the Torah, kin'ah is used very, very heavily in the discussion earlier in the book of Devarim in the subject of the sotah. And it's interesting because the sotah is described when the verse is dealt with. We hear about it like 4 times. It's really very interesting. The verse is the book of
Sotah is the wayward wife.
I'm so sorry. Yes, it's a wife who either may have betrayed her husband sexually, or maybe he's just
suspicious of her, right?
Yeah. So the verse in Numbers chapter 5, verse 14 is kind of interesting, because it uses the same word kinah 4 times, and a fit of zealous jealousy, kinah, came over the husband, and he's filled with zealous jealousy about his wife who has betrayed him. Or maybe he's filled with kinah because he is filled with kinah about his wife who did not betray him. So there's the sort of excessive use of the word kinah, as a result of which we draw a conclusion that in general the first likely explanation of what the word kinah means is some form of sexual suspicion or accusation. And sure enough, we find that that's what bothered them. Tucked into their accusations having to do with political leadership. And this is so timely, you know. I mean, I'm sure this will make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up like it did mine when I first saw this, because it's right out of today's newspapers.
Right.
They accused him of dallying with other men's wives.
Yes.
Yeah, so you now understand that even guys who in my view, there's no reason in American, in contemporary American events. It's not that long ago that Justice Clarence Thomas was accused of sexual impropriety, and he also reports that we now know about from books. He actually fell on the floor in complete despair when that accusation came. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who now sits on the United States Supreme Court, also just fell apart when that accusation came. And it's so fascinating. So even innocent guys, upright guys like Moses, with an accusation like that, it's shattering. It just penetrates to the core of your identity and unravels your self-perception.
Does it leave Moshe? Does it leave in some way wounded for the rest of his political career or his rest of career as a leader? Do we see signs that this is not over?
That's fascinating. I never thought of looking for that. The truth is, I really don't know. But I do know that, at the end of the day, at the end of the Torah in Zot HaBracha, where he spends 30 verses blessing the nation, I've often thought that, had it been me, I would have probably done it in about one verse. I would have said, Israel, the last 40 years, you guys have been a gigantic pain in the neck. You know what? God bless you. You're Joshua's problem now. I'm going home to the Lord. We're done.
So here's another one, in which this one is quite similar to other instances of trouble Moshe has with the people. Almost every time it is God intervening, punishing the people, calling them to order. It's almost never Moshe being able to push them back and make them, tame their anger or their frustration on his own. So what do we learn from that?
Yeah, maybe a clue to your question is the very unusual consequence. We have a principle in the Torah, midah keneged midah, which means the punishment to fit the crime.
Right.
In much, yeah.
Eye for an eye.
Yeah, right. Even though that's not of literal intent,
Of
but
course,
the
but
idea
but it shows
when
to
God
the
makes a punishment. So
right.
when God punished Cain in the sort of first case in the Torah, therefore it's a classic, and we learn something from it. His punishment to Cain is interesting because it is you're going to be a wanderer, and nothing you plant will ever grow.
Right.
Those are the two Now, what has that got to do with murder? And so you see this principle of midah keneged midah there very, very beautifully, if I can take 20 seconds on this,
Sure.
which is that you got to look at what motivated Cain. What motivated Cain, don't forget the guy's name is Cain, which in English would mean acquisition. This is a guy whose entire identity is wrapped around acquiring, getting stuff.
Right.
And so now they have a discussion. Adam's getting old, so Cain and Abel are talking. The Torah just says they had a conversation. It doesn't tell us what they were talking about. Why? Because it's obvious. They were saying, hey, Dad's getting old. How are we going to divide the earth? And Cain said, well, I'll keep it, and you may be a tenant. You can live wherever you like. You just have to pay me rent. Abel said, no, we'll split it half and half. Cain reacts the only way anyone whose name is Cain can react. He kills him in order to get the other half of the earth, obviously. Right. And so God says to him now, okay, you know what? You think your wealth is in owning all the real estate. You don't realize your wealth is bound up in your relationship with other people. So I have to give you a midah keneged midah. I'm going to give you all the land. You got all the land of the earth because you killed the only competition. And so now let's see what you can use your land for. Land has only two uses, agriculture and development. There's nothing else to do with land. Well, guess what? Agriculturally, you're doomed. Nothing you plant will grow. And you're going to keep traveling. It's kind of an obstacle to development if you're constantly moving from place to place. So you're going to see getting all the land isn't the key. This punishment to fit the crime applying here with Korach is fascinating because it is the only place we see somebody sort of plunged into a gaping void in the earth. And tradition has it that they weren't killed, they were actually alive, and you can hear them talking down there. There are all kinds of fascinating discussions that have been current for millennia on this topic. But there they are. They're not killed, they're not vanished, they're not gone. We know exactly where they are, something that never happened before, never happened since. So a really unique situation, which I think supports your contention that this is different from most other cases of rebellion.
Right. Rabbi, this was a fascinating tour from Korach to the Sotah to Cain and back to Korach.
We've wandered a bit.
Thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Nice talking with you. Have a great Shabbat and a good 4th of July for our American listeners.
Thank you.